Thanks to Matt Johnson for his reporting on that case. We're going to stay on this one, folks. Have a feeling that there's going to be a lot more to come. Maybe another arrest, perhaps? Let me bring in my guest to talk about this. Still with me in Orlando, Florida, jury consultant and human behavior expert Susan Constantine. And joining the conversation in Magnolia, Texas, homicide detective Fil Waters. Phil, welcome onto the show. Thank you so much for being with me. I've heard great things about you. I hear you are legendary in the world of working homicide cases. So one of my Court TV colleagues speaks very, very highly of you. And if I can start with you, tapping into that experience working homicide cases, where do you think these detectives working the Jared Bridegan case are going to go next?
Well, thank you for having me, Julie, and good morning, Susan. I appreciate the kind words. I don't know that I'm do those things, but thank you anyway. I will tell you, this case is pretty interesting, and I always find these, for lack of a better term, these conspiracy cases when you're involving family, and it is these cases are worked from the inside out. So you start with the inner circle there, people that are closest to the victim, and start to determine if there are any affirmative links between them and any kind of conflict to the death of the victim. And in this particular case, they due diligence on the parts of the detectives. They've managed to do that, and they've connected this guy that actually commits the act has no particular emotional connection to the victim, and so he's going to protect himself. And the best way for him to do that is to start talking about who actually got him involved in this event.
Right, because with that press conference, the state attorney's office shared what they were able to share, right? But they still have to be tight-lipped and would not answer the question whether more arrests were going to be made. I'm wondering, is the ex-wife next? That's kind of what my thinking is making me wonder. Susan Constantine, let me tap into your expertise. You were just sharing with us about domestic violence cases, and here it is important, right, to go back to the time of this incident because Jared Bridegan was in a bitter custody battle with Shanna Gardner Fernandez, the woman who's married to the guy who just got arrested for being involved allegedly with this plot.
Yeah, so what I'm looking at here is that nothing ever happens necessarily spontaneously. I mean, there are times where people's emotions get very, very high and these things happen, you know, they snap. But generally speaking, there is a trail of clues that things are going awry that kind of build up to this. But even more than that, what I'd like to speak to is really about how, you know, the court system is set up when it comes to dissolutions of marriage. Because there is, in my personal opinion, I think there has to be some sort of reform because I think it's set up for adversarial endings. So when you're looking at distribution of assets and child custody and court injunctions and all of these things, there just has to be some sort of reform so that the two people don't escalate to this point. That's where I think the problem stems from.
Right.
It's not de-escalating it from the beginning.
Amen, Susan. Preach. Detective Phil, let me go back to you. So way back when Henry Tenen got arrested, there was speculation like, who is this guy? What's the connection? Then it was learned that he was renting from the man who just got arrested yesterday, the husband of Bridegan's ex-wife, okay? And Tenen apparently has struck up this deal with prosecutors where he pleaded guilty already. He's admitting to being the shooter, but saying, you know, I wasn't the only one involved, essentially. I'm going to testify against whomever else you're going to be arresting here. So tell me, do you think an arrest comes next, Detective Phil, for Bridegan's ex-wife?
Well, that would be the signs here. Certainly in these cases, I'm always amazed at when we have these spousal conspiracies and there is some presumption by these folks that they think they can get away with this type of stuff. I find it very interesting because there's always going to be a trail of some kind. You know, the Hells Angels have an adage that the best secret is kept among three people is when two of them are dead. So you've got so many people involved in this thing. Someone is going to talk. And this first suspect that's been arrested, he's the one that got the deal first. And now the husband of the ex-wife, he's now up on the horizon, and he's been arrested. So I think just as a matter of progression in the investigation, it would be hard for me to imagine that the ex-wife is not going to be linked in some way to the actual murder.
Just a quick follow-up for you, Detective Phil. Would you think that she's already been interviewed?
Oh, I would imagine so. Okay. And those interviews, those initial interviews are very, very important. And then when they have subsequent interviews, if she doesn't come forth with some admissions in the first one, well, now they have a lot more information, a lot more background, especially with the arrest of her husband. And now they're going to be able to go in. If she will talk to them again, they're going to have a lot more information to go in and pose some questions to her that remain unanswered.
Sure. Susan, tell me, if you had to bet, would you bet she probably has a lawyer not going to talk at this point?
Oh, yeah. And, you know, one of the things that I want to share, too, you know, Phil and I have been working together on some of these cases, and it's great what we do together because he can look at it from such a different eye, where I look at it more in behavior, and we kind of tie it together, and it really begins to tell a story. And I think it's just very powerful. And by the way, he is a superstar.
We will take your word for that, Susan, certainly. I didn't know you two worked together. This is awesome. I'm learning so many great things that you two work together. We'll pair you up again because this has been a really insightful segment. In this case, it's far from over. I think we all know there's going to be a lot more coming in the days and weeks as law enforcement continues the investigation that the state attorney's office made very clear is still open and active. Susan, Constantine, we have to say goodbye to you, but thank you so much for your time and expertise this morning. And Detective Fil Waters is going to stick around with us.